collaborative learning. So this is the second big theme in our course when we have these three big main perspectives on learning, and collaborative learning is the second one. And we will have two lectures. Today I will talk about collaborative learning in basic level, all the basic stuff, and then next week Jonna will continue into computer-supported collaborative learning, and we'll go deeper into how technology can support collaboration and collaborative learning. And some of the things I will be telling you will be in some extent repetition on the things you have read in the intro course. Because in the jigsaw work we had these articles about collaborative learning, but because all of you read different articles, we have to make sure that you also get the same information if you didn't read the article that mentioned some things. So in this lecture, the questions we are aiming to answer are: what is collaborative learning? How does it relate to the other main themes in this theory course? What is the theoretical background in collaborative learning research? How can collaboration support learning? So why we are doing collaborative learning? What are the challenges? What are the prerequisites? So what needs to be there so that collaborative learning can be successful? And how can we support collaborative learning? And I will do most of the talking today, but I don't want to talk for 90 minutes, so we will have these brief discussion assignments where you discuss with the person sitting next to you about your own experiences and your own thoughts, so you are externalizing your own thinking and that way learning. So let's start with the first question. What is collaborative learning? Well, there is no one and only definition that every researcher would believe in or agree on. There are multiple definitions and they have similarities, but there are also differences. But how can we define collaborative learning? I think the most loose definition is this one by Dillenburg: a situation in which two or more people learn or attempt to learn something together. So this doesn't really say that much, but what it is? Well, there has to be more than one person to learning to be collaborative, and they are learning or attempting to learn something together. Another definition is that collaborative learning is a coordinated synchronous activity that is the result of a continued attempt to construct and maintain a shared conception of a problem. So there's a bit more into this definition. So the shared conception, shared understanding, that is continuously, the collaborators are continuously trying to construct this thing together. And it's somehow coordinated activity. But what collaborative learning is not? It's not one specific theory. It's not a pedagogical method, and it's not a single psychological process. The thing that's common for all the definitions of collaborative learning and all the researchers in collaborative learning is that the basis is on constructivistic idea of learning. That learning isn't just teacher pouring information for the students, but the students are themselves active in learning process and constructing their own knowledge. And in that sense, when we think about learning collaboratively, it also changes the role of the teacher. So in collaborative learning, the teacher always have a role of facilitator, coordinator, tutor in a way, and not a teacher in traditional way. So the active part is in the students' students. Students are actively working for their learning. But yeah, like I said, there are so many definitions as there are researchers almost. So you can find from literature many different definitions for collaborative learning. But one distinction that usually is made is that collaborative learning is something different than cooperative learning. Well, in some cases, in everyday language, these could be used to describe similar things. But in collaborative learning research, they are different things in many ways. So in collaborative learning, there always have to be shared goals and commitment to joint activities. When in cooperative learning, it's enough that you have joint product, but the process doesn't have to be joint in a way that it is in collaborative learning. In collaborative learning, the key thing is social interaction, whilst in cooperative learning, individual studying plays a big part. In collaborative learning, there can be roles, but they are flexible and they are negotiated, where in cooperative learning, the roles are static. And in cooperative learning, the tasks and the labor are divided vertically. That means that everyone takes their own part of the content. One book to read, one task to do, and then they are just put together in the end to create a joint product. For example, presentation. That you would have a presentation about Finland, and one of you would search information about the Finnish language, and someone else about Finnish food, and someone else about Finnish culture or something. And then you would just meet up just before the class and put your slides together and your notes together and have a presentation, but you wouldn't necessarily learn from each other during the process. Maybe in the presentation you would learn from each other, but the process wouldn't be collaborative in a way that you would actually negotiate the contents and so on. And in collaborative learning, the tasks can also be divided because a group can't do everything together. If you are working in a group of 4, for example, you wouldn't hold a pen together to write something down. So of course there has to be someone who writes down, or someone who coordinates your working timetable, or someone who thinks about your strategies for working and does this kind of, but they are not divided like this that each have their own part of the content. But they can be changing throughout your work and they could be in different levels. And I'm not saying that collaborative learning is always better way to go. In working life, for example, there are many things that benefit from cooperative work in a way that everyone just does their part. Many times it's easier and it's faster to just divide the task and everyone does their part. But it doesn't really help anyone to learn because you are doing the thing by yourself. Of course you can learn efficiently alone, but if you want to really benefit from the people around you, it has to be collaborative in that sense. And if you think about, for example, the jigsaw method that we used, there are cooperative parts. We are dividing the reading materials for all of you to study individually. But there are also time for collaborative learning, or if we are succeeding, it's really collaborative learning. When you are, for example, carrying up with your expert team and discussing how you have understand the concepts and the contents of the article. So in many of these pedagogical models and methods, there are times for cooperation and times for collaboration. Because it would be really time consuming and hard to do everything together and negotiate every single thing together. Well, now when we have defined collaborative learning, let's look at how it connects to our other concepts. Because even though there are different separate themes in our course, of course in real life they are all connected, they are not separate from each other. You have to regulate your own learning when acting in collaborative learning teams. And of course when you're learning expertise, you can learn it with self-regulation and with collaboration and so on. So they are all interrelated. And just to mention a few concepts that are in the in between of those main themes in our course. When we talk about self-regulated learning and collaborative learning, there are concepts like socially self-regulation and co-regulation of learning. I don't know if you have heard those terms, maybe in SRL course. Yeah. But they basically mean, we are not going into details on those, they are not part of this lecture, but basically they mean that the students or pupils working in teams, they are regulating each other's learning processes, or they are together regulating the whole team's learning process. And when we talk about learning of expertise, this is something that you will learn more about in the last part of this course. There are concepts like adaptive expertise and shared expertise that are in the connection of learning of expertise and collaborative learning. And basically, just the main idea is that if you want to be an expert, want to learn to be an expert nowadays in working life, you have to be able to collaborate. Because today, in today's world, no one can do everything by themselves. So to use your colleagues and use the expertise of others is really important. So then, to the background of collaborative learning. Well, if we start from the beginning, in a way that's how learning has been seen in history of learning research. Well, learning, from some point of view, is only change in behavior. So the focus is on behavior and not in the what happens inside the learner's head. What this is called behaviorism. I think this is a familiar concept to all of you. So the basic model is that there's some kind of stimulus and there's some kind of response to that stimulus, and through this conditioning people learn. This traditional like Pavlov's dog, and I think you all know these things. But the main focus was on the behavior and not on the processes that happen inside. But after behaviorism, the cognitive research actually focused on the cognitive processes, the memory and thinking and so on, to actually focus on the things that happens inside the head, that how the knowledge and how the information from outside is processed, and the words like schemas and things like that actually a learner really processes the information and not just takes it as it's given to him or her. And then, based on cognitivist ideas, the constructivism, the field that, well, these are the ideas that are mainly at this point people think that the students or the learners actively construct their own knowledge, and everything they learn is somehow related to the things they knew before, and everyone does their own active information processes and constructs their own thinking, and everyone can learn different things from the same situations and so on. And when we think about constructivism, also the metacognition and to learn how to learn skills and things like that, and the self-regulation and things like that have occurred, that actually people think that learning is something that you can learn, and you can have certain learning skills. You can actively learn to learn. And also based on constructivism, the social constructivism that can be divided to different fields that I'm going to present next, that are the basis and the different paths to go when you are researching collaborative learning. So there are three research traditions and focus points on what you focus on when you are doing collaborative learning research. And the first of those is social cognitive approach. So I think Jean Piaget is a familiar name to all of you, and after him the Genevan School has presented these ideas about learning as a social cognitive process. And the focus on social cognitive approach is on individual cognitive development. Well, of course, the social aspect is there, but the main idea is that the researchers study that how these social interactions affect on the individual level. So the focus is still in the individual. And how the learning happens, one of the main concepts here is cognitive conflict and social cognitive conflict. So, as it is stated, the cognitive conflict created by social interaction is the locus at which the power driving intellectual development is generated. So, the focus on social cognitive approach is that usually the interaction that is researched is an interaction between peers. So it is stated in this research area that actually the learning happens, these social cognitive conflicts happen more often when we are interacting with peers and not with adults or more developed peers. And the cognitive conflict, I don't know if it's a familiar term for you, but it means that you know something and you learn, hear, see something that actually conflicts with your idea of the topic. And then you have to actually think and change your ways of thinking because there's a conflict between the new information and your own old knowledge. And social cognitive conflict means that it happens in social interaction. So I have a different understanding that you do, and we have to actually negotiate. There's a conflict between our ideas, and the learning happens there in between when we have to negotiate and sort of argue this conflict out. So this is the most important concept in this social cognitive approach, the social cognitive conflict. And the other main approach is socio-cultural approach on learning, and it's based on theory of Vygotsky. And I think this is also a familiar name to all of you. But there the focus when in socio-cognitive approach is it's on in the interactions effects on the individual level. But here the focus is on the between the social interaction and individual cognitive change. So it's like a different focus area in a way. And the genetic law of cultural development, stated by Vygotsky, is that everything happens first in these interpsychological processes. So there are these general concepts and something that's happening in the interaction, and then we are internalizing them into our like intrapsychological processes. So in the interaction we are internalizing new knowledge and new strategies. So everything happens first in the interaction and then inside of our heads, so to speak. And one important term from Vygotsky's learning ideas is the zone of proximal development. So there are things that you can do by yourself, and there are things that you can do but not by yourself, but when you are helped. So this is something that is really clear with small children, for example. There are lots of things that they can't do by themselves, but if a parent or teacher is helping them, they can do it, and soon enough they will do it by themselves because they have first practiced it with the help. And this is important if you think about acting as a teacher, that from Vygotsky's ideas, you actually really have to think about what is the actual level of development of your students and what is the zone of proximal development that you should work on. So you wouldn't offer like too easy tasks that they already know how to do, but not too difficult that they don't know how to do even with your help. So we have to like be in this zone of proximal development to achieve learning. Yeah, but the main ideas are that like all individual development has its origins on social sources. And then one important thing in Vygotsky's ideas or thinking is that all the human action is mediated by tools and signs, for example language. So, and different kind of things like that. So language also plays a big role in that. But when in Piaget's research, the pairing was like that there are two peers, two children, for example, having these social cognitive conflicts and learning by them. In Vygotsky's ideas, the social interaction was usually between a child or someone who needs to learn and an adult or someone who is more developed in that area. So the other one helps the other to achieve the certain amount of development or a certain level. So helps them to actually, in this zone of proximal development, to learn things to do by themselves. And then the third approach on learning is the situated cognition approach. And it has its origins on sociology and anthropology. And the words that are used for this approach are said cognition and also situated cognition. So they are the main terms. And in this, the focus is in different parts yet again. It's not on the individual, it's not in the interaction, but it's in the larger scale of the whole social system and all of that. So it is seen that learning always happens in some kind of context. That you can't actually take the learning out of the context. And the situated cognition approach criticized the two earlier approaches on that they study learning as if it was not part of the larger social environment. So in this approach, the whole social environment is important. So the main important things here are the culture, social communities, not just the group that's collaborating in the situation and not just the interaction between them, but all the communities that they are part of, the language, the culture, and so on, has to be taken into consideration from this perspective if you want to study learning. And through these different theoretical approaches, Dillenburg and his colleagues have defined that there have been these three different paradigms in research of collaborative learning. So the first one is the effect paradigm. So there has been studies that there's this one point that person knows how to do something, a certain amount of knowledge, some kind of level of development. And then there has been collaboration in between, and then they measure what's the effect of that collaboration. So just the end result of the collaboration is the focus. But of course, what they learned when they did lots of studies, that it varies so much on what actually happens in the collaboration. You can't just do that, there's the starting point, then there's collaboration, and then there's this end result, and collaboration always leads to learning. No, it doesn't go that way. So the focus had to be shifted to the collaboration in itself. But in this conditions paradigm, the focus is on the conditions of the collaboration. So what kind of group there is? Are the knowledge base similar or not? And like the heterogeneity of the group and so on. And what kind of tasks they are doing, what are the task features? And individual prerequisites, what are the collaboration skills and so on. And the interactions between these. And the third paradigm is the interactions paradigm, that in a way, because there are also things that go beyond the conditions, the preconditions of the collaboration. So the third paradigm actually includes these two in a way that it's asking that under which conditions is collaborative learning efficient. And in this, the two following questions are that what kind of interactions occur under which conditions, and what effects do these interactions have. So the effect is studied in relation to the interaction and to the conditions that the interaction has. I don't know if I could explain this really clearly, but maybe you get the main idea. And then, based on these theoretical ideas, we can discuss that, well, you know something, you've now heard something, you have read something, and you have experienced lots of collaboration. Even in our studies so far, if not before that, you have done a lot of collaborative or cooperative learning. So now let's use about 5 to 10 minutes to discuss with the person sitting next to you, or with the person, but what kind of experiences do you have about really successful collaborative learning? So have you experienced really successful collaborative learning? And how did the collaboration in that case help you learn? And what were the factors that actually made the collaboration successful? I know that there might be people that haven't really experienced any successful collaborative learning, but hopefully everyone has at least some amount of success in that area.
Especially